Very good day to everybody. This is using Python in multimedia and gaming machines. And in this class, we'll discuss about Python installation, about the Jupyter lab, and how you'll discuss or maybe how you'll go with the web-based programming interface. Okay, so this is especially for you, my dear students and young researchers, and you can reach me at dr.christoananth@gmail.com. So before beginning the session, once again, let me thank God for giving me this opportunity to deliver this useful session, to share my knowledge among my fellow national, international participants, students, and young researchers. Right. So in this class, we'll discuss about how you will go with installation of Python in the Windows 10 platform. What are the various advanced options? What are the various steps to installation? And how you'll go with installation of Jupyter Lab? What are the supported browsers for the Jupyter Lab? And what are the installation problems, especially with the Jupyter Lab? Okay, we'll also discuss the web APIs and of course web API use cases as well. Okay, so at regular intervals, I'll be giving you some short videos to discuss the knowledge in our topics, and of course, I'll be giving you the independent work as well. So please try to complete them as soon as possible. Okay, right. So this is installation of Python in the Windows 10 platform. Okay, like it's very much simple even. Like we'll have three steps. One, you have to download the binaries. Okay. Second one, you have to run the executable installer, and of course you have to add the Python to the path environment variables. Okay. And in order to install the Python, you have to download the official Python executable installer, and you have to run the installer and maybe complete the installation steps. Okay. So finally, you can actually configure the Python variable, okay, to actually use the Python from the command line even, and you can choose the version of the Python you have to install. Maybe like earlier classes we saw like 2.7, 2.8, but now we are upgraded to the new version. Okay, so it's rather recommended to install the latest version of the Python. Okay, like 3.7.3. So this is step one. So you have to download the Python installer binaries. Okay, so first of all, you have to open the official Python website in your web browser, and maybe in the downloads tab for the Windows, you are going to choose the latest Python 3 release. Okay, so maybe you can go with the version 3.7.3. Okay, so you can click on the link to download the Windows x86 executable installer. Okay, if you are using a 32-bit installer. Okay, so maybe if your Windows installation is a 64-bit system, maybe you can download the Windows x86 64 executable installer. Okay. So once the install is downloaded, you can run the Python installer. Okay, so install launcher for all users. Okay, so check the install launcher for all users, and maybe you can check the add Python 3.7 to the path. Okay, so has to include the interpreter in the execution part. Okay, so after doing this one, okay, so you can go with selecting the customize installation. Okay, and choose the optional features. Okay, like maybe pip. Okay, tcl, tk, and idle. Okay, idle integrated development environment. Okay, Python test suite. Okay, so as to install the standard library test suite of the Python, and maybe you can install the global launcher like a py launcher. Okay, and for all users, which requires elevation event, and install for all the users. Okay, and you'll go with the next. Okay, so click on next, and maybe you'll have advanced options. Okay, so that is available while installing Python. So you'll go with install for all users, and maybe add Python to the environmental variables. Okay, so optionally you can select the associate files with Python, and maybe create shortcuts for install applications. Okay, and you make note of the Python installation directory, so where it is going to save. Okay, so you need it for the next step even. Okay, after selecting the advanced options, you can click on the install to start the installation. Okay, so in the advanced options like associate files with Python, create shortcuts for install applications. Okay, and you'll see that where it is going to save it. Okay, and you click on the install. So once the installation is complete, you will see the Python setup successful window. Okay, so you will see this one, setup was successful, special thanks. So everything is being displayed. Okay, and you can click on the close. Okay, so this is the last step. Okay, adding Python to the environmental variables. Okay, so this is how you are going to add the Python path to the system environmental variables. So generally you can do it to access the Python through the command line even. Okay, so in case if you have added Python to the environmental variables while setting the advanced options, you can actually avoid this step. Okay, so either you can do it manually also, maybe in the start menu you can search for advanced system settings. Maybe you can select the view advanced system settings. Okay, in the system properties, maybe you can click on the advanced tab, and maybe you can click on the environmental variables. Okay, so you are going to locate the Python installation directory on the system itself. Okay, so maybe if you have followed the system like the steps even. Okay, so the path, the C users, you will go with this one. Okay, so C program files, Python 3732 for 32-bit installation, and maybe for this one program files Python 3732 for 64-bit installation. Okay, so the folder name may be different from Python 3732. Okay, and you will go with the folder. Okay, and append the following entries to the path variable. Okay. So this is the new user variable. Okay, so this is how you are going to verify the Python installation. After selecting the path, okay, you can click on OK. Okay. So you have now installed the latest version, Python 3.7.3 version. So you can verify if the Python installation is successful either through the command line or maybe through the IDLE. Okay, integrated development environment. Okay, so that is installed along with the installation. Okay, and you can search for the command prompt and maybe type Python. Okay, you can see that Python 3.7.3 has been installed successfully. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, so the user slash the name Python. Okay, so you can see Python 3.7.3 has been installed. Okay, so an alternate way is to reach the Python. Okay, it's nothing but searching for Python in the start menu, and maybe you can click on the IDLE. Okay, integrated development environment. Okay, so you can start the coding in the Python using the IDLE, integrated development environment. So next one comes the Jupyter Lab. So generally you can use it by installing through the Conda, Mamba, pip environment function, or maybe Docker. Okay. So if you're using Conda, you can use it by installing with the Conda install -c Conda Forge Jupyter Lab. Okay. Or maybe you can go with Mamba platform. Okay. So you can install using Mamba install -c Conda Forge Jupyter Lab. Or maybe you can use pip file even. Okay, so if you use pip, you can install it using pip install Jupyter Lab. So it's pretty much simple. So maybe if you are using Mac OS version, so with the Python 2 platform, maybe you can run the pip 3 instead of pip. Okay, so if you are installing, okay, using the pip install user, you have to add the user level bin directory to your path environmental variable. So maybe you are using Unix derivative, you can do this by running the export path home / local / bin path. Okay, so pip n, you can use the pip n. Okay, you can install it like pip n install Jupyter Lab pip n shell. So this is the virtual environment shell. Okay, or maybe from the git checkout. Okay, so pip n install git plus the website. Okay, github.com /jupyterlab /jupyterlab.git. Okay, so the egg is equal to Jupyter Lab pip n shell. Okay. So when you are using the pip environment function, so in order to launch the Jupyter Lab, you must activate the project's virtual environment function. So pip n shell Jupyter Lab. Okay, so you can also run the Jupyter Lab inside the virtual environment with the pip n run Jupyter Lab. So this is how you are going to execute it. So next you will have Docker. Okay, so if you are Docker install, you can install and use the Jupyter Lab much more easy as well. So by selecting one of the many ready to run Docker images maintained by the Jupyter team, you can follow the instructions in the quick start guide. Okay, so that will be including the Jupyter enable lab. Okay, equal to yes, so that if you check into, okay, so which means that Jupyter Lab is enabled in your content. Okay. So these are the supported browsers: Firefox, Chrome, Safari. So earlier browser versions may also work, but there is no guarantee. Okay, so Jupyter Lab generally uses CSS for styling. Okay, which is one reason for minimum versions listed above. Okay, so maybe it will be having like IE11 or maybe Edge 14 does not support the CSS variable. So which means that Jupyter Lab doesn't go for. Okay, and are not directly supported at this time. So maybe you can have a tool like post CSS that can be used to convert the CSS files in the Jupyter Lab build directory manually if desired. And in order to install some extensions, you will have to access to the npm packages, okay, that registry, okay. So some companies do not allow reaching directly the public registry and may have a private registry even. And in order to use this, you have to configure the npm and maybe yarn, okay, to point to that, okay. And for this one, you will have npm configure set registry, the website registry.company.com/yarn, so that it will be configuring the set registry.company.com. So which means that Jupyter Lab will be picking up and will be the registry automatically given. Okay. So this is what we have. So Python -c. So from Jupyter Lab commands, import the add options, print add options.registry. Okay. So if your computer is behind this corporate proxy or maybe firewall, maybe you will encounter the HTTP hypertext transfer protocol and maybe secure socket layer errors as well due to the proxy or maybe firewall blocking connections. Okay. So you will see this error, conda HTTP error, HTTP 000 connection failed. Maybe you will have this error even. So these are the widely used sites that host the packages in the Python. So py.org, python hosted.org, continuum.input-output, anaconda.com, honda.io, github.com, githubusercontent.com, npm.js.com, yarn, pkg.com. Okay, so you can specify the proxy file, okay, usually the domain user with the particular password that you can use it to communicate through the network. So this is HTTP proxy and HTTPS proxy. That's a secure. Okay. So the variables are automatically used by many open source tools like the Conda, if it's been set correctly. Maybe for the Windows, you can set HTTP proxy, the user password at proxy.company.com. So the port set you'll have the HTTPS proxy. Okay. So user pwd print working directory at the rate of proxy.company.com. So the port you'll have for Linux or maybe Mac OS. So you are going to export HTTP proxy user pwd at proxy.company.com. Okay, and maybe export the proxy. Okay, HTTPS. Okay, proxy.company.com. Okay, so this is how you'll go for, and maybe you can communicate through the HTTP, but installation with the Conda actually fails on the connectivity problems, especially in the HTTPS service. So you can disable using the SSL secure circuit layer for the Conda. And these are the web APIs. Okay, so in computer programming, this application program interface would be allowing two systems to communicate and maybe interact with each other. Okay, so this is the reason we use web APIs even. Maybe you can use internet as a transferring medium between the two parties. Okay, so it will be using a request response message system and maybe standards like JSON or maybe XML, what we discussed in the internet programming. Okay, so these application programming interfaces will be having one or more endpoints that is actually exposed through a HTTP web server. So this is how we'll have, so the servers, other services, the desktops, tablets, laptops and smartphones are exchanging the services or maybe data through the internet. So these are the use cases. So we'll try to abstract the communication between the database and systems that are using the data. So this is the main reason that web API is much more useful in real-time scenarios. Okay, so imagine there is a social media website like maybe Facebook or maybe Twitter that users can access through the web browser. So maybe after some time, in order to improve the mobile users experience, maybe you have to have a mobile application. Okay, so the requirement is to have access from multiple different systems to a common database. So this is the reason we use web API, okay, where the client side web application that run on the browsers can actually access the web API through the HTTP request. So this is the reason we use mobile application. So generally using the mobile application, you can actually communicate over the internet and maybe you can get the data from the application program interface. So using web API, we can provide a common data access endpoint that can be used to access get the data through the internet without worrying on the system type. Okay, so there are several different multiple types of web APIs even. So most popular is the REST API. Okay, REST application program interface that is used by many of the companies. Okay, but however, Graph query language application program interface are much more advantageous over the REST approach due to the technique for minimizing the resource usage and of course better and smooth user experience. Okay, so for example, Facebook is using Graph query language. Okay, so that is used in the web application as well as mobile applications. So this is the independent work for you, application layer, game logic and game use. So I'll be uploading this one in the ends.